Hola, it is El Magnifico Profesorio Ambrosoro Crano from the Geek Collective, speaking to you once again, bringing you another unique deck tech. Imagine, if you will, a ruthless yet charismatic leader of a nomadic people, a warrior driven to seek conquest and glory, invincible upon the field of battle, who rose to lead a horde in a cult-like foe that ruled the wastes with idolatry and fear. I speak, of course, of Immortan Joe. Immortan Joe is a central antagonist of the 2015 film Mad Max Fury Road. He was once known as Colonel Joe Moore, who was a military leader during the All Wars, who formed his own gang once the government he served fell. Once filled with noble ideas of preserving society, these dreams turned to dust as he and his men entered the wasteland, where survival was the last remaining god, and only those who were strong, cunning, ruthless, or all three could make it from one day to the next. Colonel Moore was burnt by the desert, maddened by the thirst, and hardened beneath the sun, driving his followers ever onward until they came to the citadel and the aquifer it held. During the battle for the citadel that Moore was born anew, from blood and the flame, when all hope had fled his men, Joe emerged from the citadel, having slaughtered all who dwelt within, and was renamed the Immortal Man, the Immortan Joe. Now he leads a vicious cult comprised of his fanatical half-life warboys who worship Joe like a god, awaiting the time when he shall lead them to the gate of Valhalla, where they shall ride eternal, all shiny and chrome. This deck is based upon the fourth film of the Mad Max franchise, Fury Road, but instead of focusing upon the protagonist Max Rokitansky, it's instead using the antagonist Immortan Joe and his motor-mad Half-Life warboys as the key figures within the deck. Since the deck is based around the Mad Max film, it obviously uses vehicle-type artifacts that are styled like cars or trucks as centerpieces for the deck. It also uses goblins to represent the Half-Life warboys and all their mindless viciousness. The deck also has a theme of returning creatures either to your hand library or to the battlefield in order to fit the warboys' mantra, "I live, I die, I live again," and belief that the idea that dying in battle means that they shall be reborn to fight for Immortan Joe once again. Unlike many other Mardu decks, this deck is less about being pure aggro or using mid-range style control. It is still an aggressive deck that aims more to play vehicles and tokens as a way to soak up removal before you overwhelm your opponents. You're aiming to use creature recursion through such cards as Aceros, God of Passage, Alicia who smiled at death, and Haunted Crossroads, as well as get value for ETB triggers with Panharmonicon and Anointed Procession, so you can double effects or tokens. You also use Aroas, God of Victory, and Mogus, God of Slaughter as pillow forts because their abilities prevent damage and make your opponent sacrifice their own creatures. The use of 7 vehicle-type spells makes this deck fairly unique for a Mardu, and not an artifact deck. While the vehicles each have their own unique abilities, their primary use is to take advantage of creatures who are played without haste, tapping them for crew costs, and slamming in for opponents or blocking wherever you can. At its most basic, the plan behind the deck is to amass a force to overwhelm your opponents, yet it does more than that via pseudo-control methods. This is achieved through such cards as Aceros, God of Passage, Mogus, God of Slaughter, and Conqueror's Flail, to slow down your opponents, and creatures like Brutal Horde Chief and Zulaport Cutthroat combined with Blind Obedience's extort ability to zap opponents for life, ensuring that they hold back. Once you have pillow forwarded yourself up, you can start amassing your aggro engine, but your ultimate goal is to cast Gratuitous Violence before casting Fury of the Horde and World at War to get as many combat phases as you can before casting Final Fortune, ensuring that you get World at War's rebound trigger, then Glorious End, so you can either be witness or seen as mediocre. The most basic win con is smashing in with Zergo and his horde like any good Mardu aggro deck would, but what you truly want to do is get Zergo out mid to late game, get him as big as you can before casting the extra combat and extra turn spell. Your endgame is meant to be an all or nothing gamble, putting everything on the line for a glorious victory to be witnessed by all. Outside of that strategy, you just want to amass tokens, protect Zergo, or whittle away at your opponent's life with cards like Hellrider and Raid Bombardment combined with Gratuitous Violence, Berserker's Onslaught, an archetype of aggression, the latter so everything gains trample damage. If all else fails, simply cast Apocalypse via Vidalcan Ori as an instant and ruin the game for everyone else. You have low-level control via Blind Obedience and Mogos God of Slaughter, as well as Brutal Horde Chief if you have the mana to manipulate which of your opponent's creatures you want to be able to block which of your creatures. Pillar forting yourself against opponents with Atheros God of Passage and Zulapot Cutthroat, making your opponents more reluctant to remove your creatures. Flashing in blockers and attackers mid-game via Vidalcan Ori. Amassing a horde to smash into your opponents. No one expects Mountain Walk. The ultimate board wipe in a flashed-in apocalypse, assuring that no one can win. The deck can easily be taken out by board wipe. It cannot handle itself against control or infinite decks very well. Vulnerable to attack if the pillar fort is destroyed. Having Zergo and your goblins attack each turn means you're more likely to lose these creatures and have an open board for an alpha strike. Very poor mana base. No tutors to look for answers. No proper board wipes for you to use. Very poor ability to draw a card, having your permanents exiled ruin so much of your game plan, messing up your extra turn automatically loses you the game. Token generators like Krenko Mob Boss, Goblin Rebel Master, Hero of Bladehold, Assemble the Legion, and Goblin Assault combined with Anointed Procession, the doubling effect to create more tokens to flood the field with. The Vidalcan Ori to give all your non-land spells flash. The three gods Athros, Eros, and Mogos because of their indestructibility and their individual abilities. Archetype of Aggression because it gives all your creatures tramples and takes it away from your opponent, making it easier to chump block with tokens without fear of damage going through. The vehicle, especially Fleet Wheel Cruiser since it attacks turns it enters, and Blister Charger which pings creatures or players each time it attacks. Enchantments like Berserker's Onslaught, Gratuitous Violence, Blind Obedience, Goblin Side, and Haunted Crossroads. Cards that do ping damage like Hellrider, Brutal Horde Chief, Raid Bombardment, Mudbutton Torchrunner, and Zulaport Cutthroat. Conqueror's Flail, to stop opponents using spot removal on you and casting spells during your turn. Early game, you want to try to ensure that you have at least one of each colour mana source in your opening hand. A 1-drop creature for a Soul Ring, as well as Blind Obedience, you can play that on your second turn. Don't play goblins or goblin enchantments that cause your goblin creatures to attack each turn early. You need that when you can afford to have a more aggressive board state. You'll want to have Krenko and your goblin lords dropped as early as you can so you can take advantage of tribal synergies, buffing all your goblins out of range of negative counter sweepers and removal. A turn 3 or 4 Atheros is an ideal play to set up your pillow fort and make sure that you bring your creatures back or ping your enemies for damage early on. Early Alessia is a good way to bring back your low drop creatures, especially if you have open mana and can afford to bring back your goblins with ETB triggers. Bloodsoaked Champion is a valuable card to play early even though it can't block because it keeps recurring itself back from the graveyard. You want to play Archetype of Aggression when you can safely neutralise anything with trample that can pass your chump blockers. This is especially important when facing mono green deck. An early Sword of the Animus is handy to get your basic lands to the field, ramping you in the early game because this deck lacks any form of ramp. Play vehicles as early as you can, especially Fleet Wheel Cruiser because of its haste and ability to attack. Bad Crew the turn it enters. Get all the mana rocks out as soon as you can, even if it means playing no creatures on various turns. If it doesn't mess with your tempo, play Scrylands to filter the top of your deck, ensuring you've got the perfect draw. Get your token generators running as soon as possible, but be mindful of removal because it's harder to get them back once they're gone. Mid-game is the best time to start playing the rest of your token generators, including the auto-attack goblin cards. Get your recursion engine running so you don't have to suffer spot removal or too many board wipe. Don't be afraid to chump block with tokens or weak creatures because you often get them back via Alessia or Theros. Start to move into the Aggro game to pressure your opponents into making mistakes, but don't spread your attacks too wide, or make sure to keep a few blockers back when you can to ensure that you still have stuff to do. If the gods become creatures, hold them back so they can block if they can. You don't want to lose them because they're harder to recur. Use your vehicles when you can, crew them with tokens or creatures without haste, and use them to block after they have entered. Play enchantments like Gratuitous Violence and Berserker Onslaught to maintain the pain train. As you move into your endgame, now is the best time to get Zergo onto the battlefield if you haven't already done so. Use Brutal Horde Chief to control how your opponents block, mainly directing in towards Zergo or one of the gods. Get yourself into a strong position to use your attack turn doublers, ensuring to play Fury of the Horde before you play World at War, so you can get the World at War's rebound trigger. Cast Glorious End to stop opponents from comboing off, and cast Final Fortune and then the combat doublers to try and win the game. Shout before you move into the final attacks. If this all fails, try to flash in Apocalypse to ruin the game for everyone else. Always be political. Make offers to help other players so that they defend you early in the game so that you can take out a bigger threat later on. If you have Crackling Doom, threaten it often, but always use it at the right time. You must practice the play order of the cards in the deck to suit the curve as well as the style of the game you want to run. If you want to play aggro, learn the aggro style. If you want to play mid-range, learn how the mid-range cards go. This isn't a pure aggro deck, so don't try to rush everything. Take your time to build your board before committing to full attacks. Ensure that you have enough blockers and that you can take out an opponent whenever you can. Zergo of the Glass Cannon can easily be taken out unless he's attacking, so don't cast him too early because he can be too expensive to recast and becomes a very big target for your opponents to go after. Don't think of this deck as a typical Mardu aggro or Zergo Voltron deck. He isn't the most important piece, and you can win the game without him. Pillow Fort as early as you can and don't hesitate to use Atheros' abilities to ping your opponent down or get your creatures back to hand. Never attack with a little foot cutthroat. He's way too important. Always keep him on the sidelines so you can take advantage of his aristocrat-esque ability. Tokens are best for crewing your vehicles. Only use creatures and vehicles if you don't have Ogre Battle Driver on field, or they don't have haste and you want to attack with a vehicle. Always wait to use your extra turn spells and extra attack steps, because if they fizzle you lose the game automatically. And never forget to... And there you are, our Immortan Joe Road Fury deck. Not the greatest Mardu deck out there, but pretty strong at what it does. Recommended for more experienced players who can multitask well, especially doing simultaneous triggers and being mindful of your opponent's board state. As with any deck, this is, and always shall be, a work in progress, something that will change and adapt as new cards are released and old cards are revealed. If you have any questions or suggestions for the deck, feel free to leave a comment. We shall be building a deck around the character of Max Rokotansky in the near future, but our next deck will be continuing our ongoing series of Shakespeare-inspired decks, with Julius Caesar and the Ides of March. Until then, why don't you try our LSC method, check out the links below, and have fun building and playing. Adios e buona suerte.